In this video, I'm going to show you step by step how to easily show your pivot table and pivot chart slicer selections into a single cell. So we've got a pivot table here, and we've got a pivot chart next to the pivot table, and we've got a slicer city here. So every time a selection is made on the city slicer, for example Cape Town, you'll have the filter selection displayed in this box here. If you choose another selection, say for example Istanbul and Rome and Mexico City, only those cities are selected from the slicer are shown in this box here. And if you remove the filter, it shows all cities selected. Next, I'll show you how it's done, step by step. These are the steps that you need to take to show your selected pivot table slice items in a cell. The first step is to copy the pivot table. So I've got the pivot table copied. I copied it from this pivot table sheet here, pivot table report. And when you copy the pivot table, you have to make sure you don't just highlight the cells within the pivot table. You need to make sure you highlight the area around it as well. And that way, when you copy it, in this case, I copied it from cell B5, you also retain the functionality, the interactivity. And when you copy it, and this part here of the pivot table will say something like row items, change it to anything like I've called it filter city in this case. And here you have all the items in the pivot table. I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to show you show field list. So when you've got your pivot table, you have to make sure there's nothing in the columns, filters, or the values part of the pivot table. Just the field where you want the filtered items to be in, just the row items only. Nothing in values, nothing in columns, nothing in filters. The other option you need to make sure you check is right click the pivot table and click on sort and click on more sort options, and this sort option here put in ascending order and then choose the field. In this case there's only one field, city. Click on OK. The next step is you need to create a formula comprising of the city, comma, and space, and that's going to be based on the filtered items. So I've got a screen tip here, a comment here. What it's doing is we want to make sure if the length of the filtered item in B6 going all the way down, in this case B6 is greater than 0, then we want to merge the filtered city B6 with a comma and a space. And if the length of B6 is not greater than 0, so it's nothing, 0, then we want to display space. I've got the screen tip showing, so I'm going to do the formula here while it's showing. So if length of the filtered city from B6 downwards, but in this case we're going to be B6 first, B6 greater than 0, then we want to merge the filtered city with a comma and a space, otherwise nothing. Accept the formula and copy it down. I'm going to copy it all the way down, not just to the maximum number of items, also for additional rows as well, and just in case there's new cities appearing in the dataset. As you can see, you've got a comma appearing at the end of each of the filtered cities and a space which you can't see. Next, step 3 is maximum number of cities. We've got the maximum number of cities, nothing's been filtered. If I go into the dashboard, there's nothing selected from the slicer. There's a maximum of 10 items here. So as you can see, you've got 10 there. Put a manual amount here, 10. Step 4 is you need to determine the number of cities selected. So this uses a count A formula. So I'm going to double click on it. The count A formula is basically counting non-empty values from B6 all the way down to B20 to take into account new cities appearing in the dataset. So to test that, if I apply a filter from the pivot table and take off New York, Paris, we've now got 8 cities appearing in the filter city pivot table, and as you can see it's 8 cities, the number count of 8 is appearing. So that's working correctly. Step 5, what we need to do is we need to make sure that the slice is connected to all the pivot tables, not just the pivot table relating to the dashboard, but the pivot table related to the copy where we're going to be doing the filtering. And to do that is we need to go to the slicer, right click on this menu item here, report connections. This dialog box appears, report connections, and then the name of the field, which is city. make sure that all the pivot tables, required pivot tables are checked. So in this case, the pivot table report here, that's the dashboard, and the pivoted items, that's the helper sheet, and it's pivot table 16 for the helper. Okay, show you, if you right click on the pivot table, copy for the filter, click on pivot table options, you'll see that the name of the pivot table named by Excel is pivot table 16, and that's the one that was selected for the report connection. Right, so when that's done, step 6, what we need to do now is we need to concatenate all these values, these filter cities with a comma and a space, and we use a concatenate formula. So I've used the concatenate formula. You need to individually select each one, and I've done it all the way down to B20 for new items appearing. Newer versions of Excel, you can use text join, that'll do the same thing, but I'm doing this for all versions of Excel, so this will work in all the versions of Excel before Office 365. So, and the next step 7 is we need to remove the last comma in the concatenated string. As you can see from the concatenated string, because we merged the comma and the space with the city, the very last item has got a comma and a space which you can't see. What we want to do is we want to remove those. We need to strip those out. What we need to do is we need to find out the length of the string and then take off 2 and then put that in the second argument of a left function. So the left function will not just copy the entire length of the string but take off 2 at the end, and this formula does that, as you can see. So here, if I do it here, if equals left, like the string calculated in step 6, then we do a length of that string and minus 2, accept the formula. So as you can see, the string, the concatenate string in 7 is exactly the same as the one in step 6, except we don't have that comma and space. Next, step 8 is we want to make sure that if nothing's been selected from the slicer, then we want to show all cities selected rather than every single city. It makes it easier to see. There's no point showing all cities when nothing's been selected, so we can just say all cities selected. And to do that, we make use of the values in cell H6 and cell F6. So here what we're doing is, if H6 equals F6, means the number of cities selected is nothing, that's going to equal to the maximum number of cities. Then we want to say all cities selected. And if that's not the case, so if something selected, then as you saw earlier, then the number of cities selected will be less than 10. In that case, we want to display the string in step 7. So that's working, and let's test that. So suppose we make a selection here. We take off one of the selections, Cape Town. So now we see that the number of items selected is 9, and that's less than 10. And rather than showing all cities selected, it's showing the string in step 7, so we know it's working correctly. We remove the filter, and the final step is to link the formula cell to the dashboard. So the final formula cell is this one here, cell F20. You go into pivot table report and press equal. So this is going to be the merged cell where we want the selected items to be appearing. All we need to just select the final output formula. So now it's working. So that's all the steps you need to take to show all your selected items in a cell from a pivot slicer. So let's test that. Suppose we press control and we don't want Paris, we don't want. So as you can see, all the other cities are selected, and only those cities are selected are shown here. We remove the filter, all cities are selected. Thanks for watching. and watch out for my next video.